You ever wonder how long it really takes for someone to regret losing you? Like, what's the exact moment she finally realizes she messed up? Is it days, weeks, months? Or maybe it's the moment you stop caring altogether? Let's be honest, right now you probably replay everything in your mind, the memories, the laughs, the things you could have done differently. You wonder if she's thinking about you, if she's scrolling through your old photos, if she misses your voice. But here's the truth no one tells you. Regret doesn't start when she leaves. It starts when you stop chasing. It starts when your energy disappears from her world. Because the moment you detach, she loses the version of herself that existed around you. You see, when you were giving everything, your time, your attention, your presence, she got used to it. She thought it would never end. That your love was endless, that no matter how cold she acted, you'd still show up. But absence changes everything. The silence grows louder, your name starts to echo in her mind, and the same energy she once ignored, she starts to crave again. So how long does it take for her to regret it? It depends on one thing, how fast you grow when she's gone, because if you sit there waiting for her message, still stuck in her shadow, regret takes longer. But if you stand up, rebuild your life, chase purpose, and let the pain turn into fuel, that's when the clock starts ticking for her. That's when the power shifts. And it's not revenge, it's reality. Because people don't miss what you give them, they miss what you become after they can't reach you anymore. Now listen, this isn't about playing games, this is about understanding your value. When you stop making her the center of your world, you naturally create distance. That distance, your absence, forces reflection. She starts to see how calm you've become, how peaceful your silence feels, how strong you look without trying. That's when the regret sets in. Not because you're gone, but because you're different. So if you're sitting there wondering, when will she realize? The answer is simple. She will realize the moment you stop waiting for her to realize. That's when everything flips, because time doesn't make her regret losing you. Your transformation does. You become the reminder she can't ignore, not because of what you say, but because of who you've become when she's no longer around to distract you. So maybe the question isn't, how long until she regrets losing me? Maybe it's, how long until I finally start living like I never needed her? Because that's when the real clock starts ticking. And once it does, trust me, she'll feel every second of your absence. The silent phases of her regret. You know what's crazy? Regret doesn't arrive with a bang. It walks in quietly, like a shadow that creeps behind her thoughts. And the funny thing, she doesn't even realize it's happening at first. Have you ever wondered what actually happens in her mind after you detach? Like, does she immediately miss you? Does she secretly check your stories trying to see if you've moved on? Or does she convince herself that she's better off until something deep inside her starts to whisper, he's really gone? Here's where the truth hides. Regret has phases, and each one is built by your silence, not your words. And if you understand these phases, you'll never chase anyone again, because the first phase is denial. After you disappear, she tells herself she doesn't care. She laughs louder, goes out more, posts pictures that scream, I'm fine. But behind that smile is confusion. Because the energy she once felt from you, it's gone. And that emptiness, it starts to echo. She scrolls through her phone. Your chat thread still there but silent. Your name pops up and for a second her chest tightens. That's phase one, the beginning of the internal storm. Then comes curiosity. She wonders what you're doing, who you're with, why you haven't reached out. Because your silence, your calmness creates mystery, and mystery breeds attraction. See, most men destroy attraction by trying to remind her of what they had, but the wise man, he lets her memory do the reminding for him. He lets curiosity pull her back in, naturally. Then, after curiosity comes comparison. She starts talking to other guys, but it doesn't hit the same. The laughs feel shallow. The conversations don't flow, because deep down she's comparing every man to the presence you once had. Your calmness, your patience, your aura, that rare kind of peace that can't be faked. And this is where your absence becomes your weapon, because when you live with purpose, when you start growing, healing, and improving silently, she feels it, even from miles away. Energy doesn't need contact to be felt. She starts noticing it in subtle ways, in how you no longer post about pain, in how you look focused, in how you've stopped reacting. And that's when phase 4 hits, reflection, the hardest one. This is when she starts asking herself, was it my fault? Did I push him away? Why does he look happier without me? And those questions, those quiet late-night questions, they're the real signs of regret. Because by now she's not thinking about what you did wrong, she's thinking about what she lost. That's the power of detachment. It turns emotional chaos into mental clarity, first for you, then eventually for her. But here's the key, this only happens when you truly move forward, not pretend, not fake it. You detach because you're rebuilding your own life. Because you're realizing that your energy, your focus, your peace are sacred. And when she feels that shift, her subconscious knows you've become the man she can't reach anymore. That's what creates regret, not revenge, not games, but evolution. So the real question isn't, will she regret it? The real question is, will you grow enough to make her see what she walked away from? Because the deeper your transformation, the deeper her reflection. And reflection always leads to regret. The psychology of distance. Have you ever noticed how the moment you stop chasing, people start noticing you more? It's strange, right? The same people who ignored you when you were available suddenly see your worth when you stop showing up. It's like your silence speaks louder than your words ever did. But why does that happen? Why does distance create attraction? Why does detachment make people value what they once took for granted? And why do they always realize it only after you're gone? Let's break it down, because this isn't magic, it's psychology. When you were constantly giving, constantly available, constantly checking up on her, your presence was predictable, and the human mind, especially in relationships, stops appreciating what's predictable. Familiarity breeds comfort, and comfort breeds carelessness. But the moment you withdraw, not as a tactic, but because you've outgrown the need for constant approval, you trigger something primal in her psychology, the fear of loss. See, when someone feels your energy fading, they subconsciously start questioning their importance. They start asking, did I matter to him? Why isn't he reaching out? Has he moved on? Those questions create emotional tension, and that tension becomes attraction. Because attraction isn't born from availability, it's born from uncertainty. And detachment introduces that uncertainty without you having to say a single word. You see, most men make the mistake of thinking love grows from constant presence. They think, if I show her how much I care, she'll stay. But the truth is, the more you try to prove your worth, the more you silently tell her you don't believe you have it. You hand her emotional power, and she feels it. But when you detach, when you redirect that energy toward your life, your goals, your peace, your purpose, something shifts inside her. She starts feeling the loss of your emotional investment, and the brain reacts the same way it does when something valuable disappears. It starts to crave it. That's the secret no one tells you. Absence makes her curious. Curiosity creates interest. Interest leads to longing, and longing leads to regret. But here's where most men mess it up. They think detachment means ignoring her or pretending not to care. No, that's just emotional disguise. True detachment means you've genuinely accepted that you don't control how she feels. You only control how you live. You've let go, not because you want her to come back, but because you've learned how to exist without needing her validation. And when you reach that point, your energy changes. Your vibe no longer says, I need you. It says, I'm at peace, and peace is magnetic. She'll feel it even if you don't speak, even if you don't post, even if you've completely disappeared from her daily life. Because energy, when it's real, doesn't require contact. it travels through memory. And that's the beautiful paradox of detachment. The less you try to be remembered, the more unforgettable you become. So stop asking, when will she regret losing me? Instead ask, when will I finally master the calm that makes me untouchable? Because when you do, you stop waiting for her to see your value, you become your value. That's when regret begins for her, and real freedom begins for you. The calm that makes you dangerous. Ever wondered why the calmest men always seem to have the most control? Like when everything's falling apart, when emotions are high, when she's pulling away, he doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, he doesn't panic, he just breathes like he knows something everyone else doesn't. And somehow that silence, that stillness, commands more respect than 1,000 words ever could. But how does calmness make someone so powerful? Why does being emotionally steady make people regret losing you faster than any grand gesture ever could? And how does Stoic peace turn absence into a mirror that reflects their mistakes back at them? You see, here's the truth most men never hear. Your calmness is your leverage. Your peace is your proof that you've mastered yourself. And when you've mastered yourself, no one, not even the one who walked away, can control you anymore. When a woman disrespects you, when she takes your effort for granted, she expects you to react. She expects anger. She expects you to try harder to prove your worth. She expects emotional chaos, because that's how most men respond, out of pain, not power. But when you don't respond the way she expects, it scrambles her sense of control. Your calm energy becomes unpredictable, and that unpredictability makes her think. It makes her replay every word, every choice, every moment, because your silence isn't just quiet, it's loud with meaning. It says, you no longer have emotional power over me, and that's when the shift begins. That's when regret takes root. Because calmness, when paired with detachment, sends one of the strongest psychological signals you can ever send. You cannot shake me. The moment you stop fighting for her attention, you start earning her respect. Because respect doesn't come from force, it comes from presence without desperation, from energy that says, I want peace more than I want validation. And here's the paradox most men miss. The more emotionally reactive you are, the smaller you appear in her eyes. But the calmer you stay, the larger your presence grows, even in your absence. When she realizes she can't affect your peace, she starts questioning her impact on your life. She wonders, why isn't he broken? Why isn't he angry? Why isn't he trying to fix this like before? Those questions eat away at her confidence, because they reveal something she never expected. You were never chasing her, you were just giving her space within your calm world. See, emotional mastery doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you choose when and how to express what you feel. You don't explode, you don't beg, you understand. You process quietly, you act intentionally. And that quiet strength, it's intimidating. Because in a world full of loud, reactive men trying to prove themselves, the man who can sit in stillness becomes rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. Your calm isn't passive, it's powerful. It's the mark of a man who's done fighting battles outside because he's already won the one inside. That kind of peace cannot be faked. It comes from knowing your worth so deeply that no rejection can shake it. And when she sees that she no longer has the power to disturb your inner world, something inside her begins to unravel. That's when she starts to feel the regret. Not because you're gone, but because she realizes she never truly had you. You were present, yes, but your soul was never dependent on her attention. And that realization, it burns deeper than any silence ever could. Because at that point, she's not just missing your presence, she's missing the peace you brought into her life. The peace she thought was ordinary until you stopped giving it. So remember this, your calmness isn't weakness, it's a silent signal of emotional control. It's what separates the men who crumble from the men who rise. And when you've mastered that calm, you no longer wait for her to regret losing you. You know she will. Because no woman ever forgets the man who stayed grounded while she created storms. The power of scarcity, why they crave what they can't have. Have you ever noticed how people only start missing you when you stop being so available? Like when you finally stop calling, stop texting, stop showing up first. Suddenly they remember you exist. Suddenly the same attention they took for granted becomes valuable, and the same silence they ignored starts to feel loud. But why does this happen? Why do they realize your worth only after you're gone? And why is it that the man who gives less attention ends up getting more of it back? Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never learn. The human mind doesn't value abundance, it values scarcity. The more something is available, the less the brain assigns importance to it. And when you're always there, always giving, always ready, she subconsciously feels like she doesn't need to earn you, because what's free is rarely valued. But when you start valuing yourself, when your time and attention become earned instead of given, that's when something deep inside her changes, because now you're not a constant, you're a privilege, and privileges, my friend, are feared when lost. Scarcity isn't about playing games or pretending you're busy, it's about truly becoming busy with your own life. It's about making your mission, your peace, your goals, your world so consuming, so meaningful, that you naturally become less available, not because you're trying to make her chase you, but because you're chasing something bigger. And that shift changes everything, because when you no longer orbit around her, she starts to orbit around you. Think about it. When a man lives for someone else, he becomes predictable. And predictability kills curiosity. But when a man lives for purpose, he becomes mysterious, and mystery breeds desire. You see, attraction doesn't survive on constant attention. It thrives on controlled distance. That distance gives her time to feel the absence of your energy. And absence, when backed by purpose, becomes your greatest advantage. But here's where most men fail. They confuse absence with avoidance. Avoidance is when you disappear out of fear or insecurity. Absence is when you focus on growth and let your silence speak for you. One creates confusion, the other creates respect. So when you pull your energy back into yourself, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, you teach her something powerful, that your world moves with or without her, and that realization hits harder than any argument ever could. Because the man she thought needed her suddenly doesn't. The man she thought she could control can't be moved, and the attention she once dismissed becomes rare. That's when regret begins to creep in quietly. She starts noticing the empty space your presence once filled. The random check-ins stop, the validation disappears, the warmth fades, and what's left is silence that echoes louder with every passing day. Because your energy had weight, and now that it's gone, her world feels lighter but emptier. Here's the truth that separates the strong from the desperate. The man who gives everything loses himself, but the man who gives selectively becomes powerful. Scarcity isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's knowing that your time is sacred. It's realizing that not everyone deserves access to your peace, your energy, or your attention. And when you finally understand that people start to treat you differently, you stop being that nice guy who's always available. You become that man who moves with intention. Your silence becomes your boundary. Your absence becomes your value. Your focus becomes your magnet. And that's when everything flips. Now she's wondering where you are, who you're with, what you're doing. Not because you're trying to make her jealous, but because she can feel that your energy is no longer centered around her. You've become scarce. And in a world full of men begging for attention, scarcity is the ultimate power move. So understand this. The moment you stop giving your energy freely, the world starts wondering how to earn it again. And that's when they begin to regret losing you, not because you begged them to, but because you finally became too rare to replace. The calm that breaks her mind, the silent power of emotional discipline. Have you ever noticed what happens when a man doesn't react? When she expects anger, but gets calm. When she pushes, tests, provokes, and he just looks at her with quiet control. That moment right there, it's not weakness, it's power. Because silence in the face of chaos is not emptiness, it's command. Let me ask you this. Why do most men lose control when emotions rise? Why do they argue, explain, chase closure, defend their worth like their peace depends on it? And why do they always end up being the ones who look desperate while she walks away with her composure intact? It's because no one ever taught men that emotional control is not suppression, it's strategy. You're not holding your emotions hostage, you're leading them. You're not ignoring pain, you're mastering response. And that right there is what separates the grounded man from the reactive one. You see, when a man can remain calm while everything around him is unstable, he becomes magnetic, because calmness creates contrast, and contrast creates power. In a world where everyone reacts instantly, the man who pauses becomes unpredictable, and unpredictable men hold leverage. But let's go deeper, because this isn't just about relationships, it's about how your energy moves through life. When you argue with her, you feed her emotions. When you explain yourself too much, you feed her control. When you try to prove your worth, you hand her your peace on a silver plate. But when you stay calm, detached, silent, she's left facing herself. Her words echo back. Her emotions hit the walls of your stillness. And suddenly, she feels the imbalance. That's the paradox. Your calm exposes her chaos. Your control reflects her loss of it. And the more you stand still in your strength, the more she starts to question hers. Now, you might think, but won't that make her think I don't care? No, brother. It shows that you care about yourself first. And that's the foundation of masculine energy. It's not cold, it's centered. Because the man who can hold himself in stillness, without chasing, without over-explaining, without emotional fireworks, is the man she can trust when life gets real. See, emotional mastery isn't about bottling up your feelings, it's about not letting anyone steer them. You still feel everything, you just don't broadcast everything. And that difference changes how people treat you. When she knows she can't make you lose your cool, she starts respecting your mind. When she can't predict your reactions, she starts craving your presence. When she realizes your validation doesn't hinge on her behavior, she starts seeking yours. That's when attraction shifts, not because you played a game, but because you played yourself into power. Let me paint a story for you. A man once said nothing after being insulted. He didn't storm out, he didn't argue, he simply smiled, stood up, and walked away. 2 weeks later, the same person who disrespected him called, apologized, and asked to see him again. Why? Because silence leaves room for imagination. And imagination is where regret grows. This is the same in relationships. When you stay calm instead of reacting, she starts to wonder, did I go too far? Did I lose him? Did I matter less than I thought? That's not manipulation, that's reflection. You're letting her see herself without the distraction of your reaction. You've given her silence to sit with her own behavior. And while she's there, analyzing her choices, you're moving forward. You're training, working, reading, growing, living, because your energy is too precious to waste on proving your worth. That's what emotional mastery looks like in real time. You become untouchable, not because you don't feel pain, but because you don't live in it. You process, you learn, you rise, and while everyone else burns themselves out chasing validation, you build peace that no one can buy. So remember this. A man's silence is not weakness when it's backed by self-control, it's his sharpest weapon. Because calm energy doesn't beg, it doesn't convince, it just is. And that is shakes people more than any words could. That's why when you stop reacting, they start reflecting. When you stop chasing, they start noticing. And when you master calmness, they start regretting. Not because you punished them, but because you showed them what true strength feels like. This is emotional power, not loud, not aggressive, not chaotic, just grounded, silent, magnetic, the kind of presence that lingers long after you're gone. The power of silent leveling up. when your growth becomes their regret. You ever notice how quiet progress shakes the room louder than any words? You disappear. You stop explaining. You stop proving. And suddenly, people start asking, where's he been? What's he doing now? Why does he seem so different? That's the thing about silence. It doesn't announce transformation. It reveals it when the time is right. But let's be real for a second. Why do most men start improving only after heartbreak? Why do they wait until someone disrespects them to finally become the man they should have been all along? And why do they start the grind but stop once they feel a little better, like the mission is complete once she notices? It's because they were never building for themselves. They were building for a reaction, and that's why it collapses. You see, real growth, the kind that leaves people speechless, doesn't come from trying to prove someone wrong. It comes from outgrowing the need to prove anything at all. When your life starts moving in silence without validation, without showing it off, that's when your power becomes dangerous. Let's dive deeper. When a man embraces his solitude, his world expands. He stops needing noise to feel alive. He starts valuing the process more than the applause. That's where peace begins, because silence becomes your training ground. While she's checking who liked her photos, you're reading. While she's out trying to feel wanted, you're in the gym building consistency. While others are chasing attention, you're learning to master your emotions, your focus, your craft. That's not loneliness, that's discipline evolving into purpose. And here's the truth. Purpose changes everything. When your energy starts flowing toward your mission, instead of validation, you become rare. You start carrying that calm, heavy presence, the kind of aura that can't be faked. Because a man living with purpose doesn't chase approval, he creates results, and people, especially women, can feel that difference. Ever noticed how she starts watching when you stop talking? When you start upgrading your lifestyle quietly, dressing sharper, moving different, staying focused, she notices, not instantly, but eventually. Because growth is like gravity, it pulls attention without effort. And here's the paradox. The moment you no longer care if she regrets losing you, that's when she starts to, because your life becomes proof. Every action, every improvement, every moment of calm success, it's silent evidence that she misjudged your worth. But make no mistake, this isn't about revenge, this is about respect. Not the one she gives you, but the one you finally give yourself. Because when a man starts respecting his time, his peace, his goals, everything changes. He no longer needs to show progress. He embodies it. And that embodiment has weight. It speaks in subtle ways. When you walk into a room with focus in your eyes, calm in your energy, and purpose in your stride, people feel it before they even see it. That's the kind of growth that doesn't need a caption. It doesn't scream, "Look at me." It whispers, "You'll understand later." Let's call this what it really is. Energy reallocation. You're not ignoring her. You're investing in yourself. You're not being distant. You're becoming directional. And over time, that shift builds power momentum. Because while most men waste months in emotional loops, the Stoic man uses pain as fuel. He builds muscle from heartbreak. He builds wisdom from silence. He builds focus from rejection. He doesn't post about it. He lives it. And eventually, the world catches up. So when she finally looks back, she doesn't see the same man she left. She sees a version that can't be accessed anymore. Not because you hate her, but because your new level doesn't speak the old language. And that right there, that silent distance is what creates regret. Because regret doesn't come from your words, it comes from your evolution. When she realizes that she didn't just lose you, she lost access to your upgraded self. So don't announce your comeback, don't make noise, just become. Become so stable, so peaceful, so purposeful, that even your silence carries a presence stronger than her attention ever did. And remember, you don't win by getting her back. You win when your life becomes so good, you wouldn't even want her back. Because the man who learns to grow in silence never goes backward. His absence becomes his language, his success becomes his statement, and his peace becomes the loudest revenge of all. The paradox of emotional stillness. When you stop needing closure, you become the closure. You ever notice how the moment you stop needing an answer, you finally understand everything? It's strange, right? The less you chase explanations, the clearer life becomes. And yet, most men can't resist it. They crave that one last talk, that one final text, that one clean ending that makes everything make sense. But here's the problem. What if closure doesn't come from her words, but from your silence? Think about it. Why do we feel the need to explain our worth after being disrespected? Why do we wait for someone else to see our value before we decide to move on? And why do we still hope that understanding their reasons will somehow stop the pain? Because deep down, we think peace comes from her clarity, but Stoicism teaches you something colder and truer. Peace doesn't come from what she says, it comes from what you accept. When you reach that moment of stillness, where you no longer want to fix, argue, or prove anything, that's not weakness, that's emotional mastery in its purest form, because silence, when it's born from understanding, becomes power. Let's be real. Closure is an illusion people chase to avoid sitting with reality. They want a logical explanation for an emotional wound. But human nature doesn't operate on logic, it operates on emotion. You can't reason your way through heartbreak, you feel your way through it, then grow beyond it. That's why detachment is not about pretending you don't care. It's about caring from a distance with dignity. It's saying, I understand what happened, but I don't need to hold it anymore. That's what emotional stillness really means. It's not cold, it's clear. Now here's the paradox. When you stop chasing emotional resolution, you become the resolution, because your calmness, your quiet acceptance, your focus on your path, it sends a signal stronger than any message you could ever send. You stop existing in her chaos, and that absence creates reflection. Let's talk about what actually happens in her mind when you reach that level. At first, she feels relief. She thinks your silence means surrender. She believes you've moved on too easily. But time changes everything, because silence, real silence, starts to echo. It makes her wonder, how did he detach so fast? Did he never care? Or is he stronger than I thought? That's when regret begins, not because she lost attention, but because she lost emotional control. She can no longer predict your reactions. You've become unreadable, unreachable, and that mystery, your calm indifference, becomes her mirror. She starts questioning herself, but the key is, you didn't do anything. You just stopped overreacting. You stopped explaining. You stopped feeding the loop. That's the essence of Stoic control. No emotional overinvestment, no forced outcomes, no dramatics, just peace. And in that peace, your energy transforms. You go from being emotionally reactive to emotionally centered, from chasing closure to becoming closure, from wanting validation to radiating self-worth. Because think about it, a man who doesn't need an apology commands more respect than the one demanding it. A man who doesn't fight for attention becomes the one who gets it effortlessly, and a man who can stand in silence while the world expects him to break. That's the man who earns peace most people never find. Stillness is misunderstood. People think it's lack of emotion, but it's actually control of emotion. You still feel everything, you just choose not to be ruled by it. You don't suppress pain, you absorb it. You let it teach you where your limits are, where your strength lies, where your peace begins. And here's what's profound. Once you learn to sit with discomfort without reaching for someone to fix it, you start building a kind of internal gravity. You stop orbiting around others' emotions. They start orbiting around yours. That's when detachment becomes magnetic. Because your calm presence becomes something rare, something that can't be faked, you start realizing you don't need to win arguments to feel right. You don't need her to understand your value. You don't even need her to regret losing you, because regret is no longer your goal, peace is. And ironically, that's exactly when the tables turn. When you're no longer emotionally invested in outcomes, she starts to feel the emptiness left behind. She starts to sense the void your energy once filled. That's when her curiosity turns into reflection. Reflection turns into realization, and realization turns into regret. But by then you've outgrown the version of yourself who needed her recognition. Because your stillness turned into your closure. Your peace became your proof, and your absence became her lesson. So don't chase the explanation. Don't demand the apology. Let silence do its work. Let stillness speak, because one day, when she looks back, she'll realize something powerful. You didn't walk away to hurt her. You walked away to heal yourself. And that is the kind of ending that needs no closure. The rebirth, when detachment turns you into the man you were meant to be. Have you ever noticed that the moment she walks away, something deeper wakes up inside you? Not anger, not desperation, something quieter. A question that almost whispers, "Who am I without her?" It's strange, isn't it? Because for a long time your life revolved around making her stay. You measured your days by her responses, your mood by her attention, your worth by her validation. And now, when she's gone, you face the silence that used to scare you the most. But here's the truth, that silence isn't punishment, it's the beginning of your rebirth. You see, heartbreak has two roads. One leads to self-destruction, where you drown in what you've lost. The other leads to transformation, where you rebuild from what you've learned. And every man must choose. But here's the problem most men face. They don't allow themselves to rebuild. They stay stuck in the story. They replay the memories like a movie that won't end. They keep checking her social media, wondering who she's with now, asking, does she even miss me? They don't realize they're giving energy to a ghost. So let me ask you, what if the pain you feel isn't a sign of loss, but a signal to evolve? What if your detachment isn't about letting go of her, but returning to yourself? And what if this silence is not emptiness, but space for something better to grow? That's what Stoicism reveals in these moments, that the end of one attachment isn't the end of you, it's the start of clarity. When you detach, you're not erasing emotion, you're reorganizing it. You start putting energy where it actually matters, into your body, your craft, your dreams, your mission. Because, think about it, every time you chased her, what happened to your fire? It dimmed. Every time you begged for attention, what happened to your focus? It scattered. Every time you tried to prove your worth, what happened to your self-respect? It cracked. But when you detach sincerely, not strategically, you begin to reclaim your own energy. You stop leaking attention on what's gone and start investing it in what's becoming. You rediscover your purpose, and purpose changes everything. When a man moves from attachment to alignment, something profound happens inside him. He no longer needs to be chosen because he's already chosen himself. He no longer waits for external validation because his worth is no longer up for debate. He walks differently, talks differently, thinks differently, and people can feel it. This is the transformation stage, the rebirth, where heartbreak doesn't destroy you, it forges you. You start rebuilding from truth, not illusion, from stillness, not noise, from direction, not desperation. You start to realize that the same energy that once wanted to be loved now wants to create, to conquer, to lead. And that's when something incredible happens. You stop seeking meaning through her and start creating meaning through your life. Look at it this way. Before your self-worth was outsourced, now it's internalized. Before you were emotionally reactive, now you're emotionally grounded. Before your happiness depended on her presence, now it flows from your purpose, and that's when she starts to feel your absence in a way she didn't before. Not because you're gone, but because your energy has shifted. You're no longer in emotional orbit around her world. You've become your own center of gravity. And that gravity, peaceful, self-assured, untouchable, is what women find irresistibly magnetic. Because here's what most don't understand. Detachment doesn't make you less emotional. It makes your emotions pure. It filters out the neediness, the desperation, the external validation. It leaves behind only truth, only strength, only grounded energy. And that kind of energy, it doesn't chase. It attracts, naturally, effortlessly, because people can sense when you've made peace with yourself. And this transformation isn't about winning her back. That's small thinking. It's about becoming the man who never loses himself again, no matter who walks away. When you start to live with that kind of emotional discipline, something sacred happens. You stop negotiating your value. You don't explain your boundaries anymore. You don't beg to be understood. You don't perform to be accepted. You just live with integrity, and that energy creates a ripple in how you carry yourself, in how people respond to you, and even in how women perceive you. Because when a man walks with purpose, peace, and quiet confidence, he doesn't need to chase validation. Validation begins chasing him. So maybe the question was never, how long until she regrets losing me? Maybe the real question is, how long until I stop needing her regret to feel free? Because when that day comes, you've already won. When your focus shifts from her absence to your evolution, regret becomes irrelevant. You start realizing that every loss was actually redirection, that every silence was preparation. So stop measuring time by when she'll realize your worth. Start measuring it by how fast you're becoming the man who never doubts it again. That's what detachment truly gives you. Not just power, not just peace, but rebirth. The kind of rebirth that makes you unshakable, unstoppable, and unforgettable. Because once a man rises from his own ruins, he never fears loss again. He becomes the loss. The final shift, when her regret stops mattering and your power begins. Let me ask you something honest. What if her regret doesn't even matter anymore? What if the real victory isn't her missing you, but you no longer needing her to? See, men spend months, sometimes years, waiting for that day, the day she texts again, the day she finally realizes what she lost, the day she says, "You were the one." But here's the paradox. The moment you stop waiting for that day, it arrives. And it's not because of some trick or cosmic reversal. It's because your energy shifts from wanting her validation to being your validation. That's when everything changes. You start to understand what true detachment actually is. It's not apathy. It's not coldness. It's control. It's knowing that your peace can't be rented by anyone's attention. It's realizing that you were never chasing her love. You were chasing your reflection through her eyes. And once you reclaim that reflection, you become whole again. That's the secret no one tells men. You don't find peace by making someone return. You find peace by returning to yourself. Think about it. When you stop trying to convince someone of your worth, when you stop explaining why you deserved better, when you stop performing to prove that you're the good guy, you create silence. But this silence isn't emptiness, it's energy. And that energy begins to build power. Power of focus, power of calmness, power of presence. This is the same energy that great men carry, the kind that doesn't talk loud but walks heavy, the kind that doesn't seek attention but naturally gets it. Because when a man is centered, truly centered, he moves differently. He listens more, he reacts less, he chooses peace over panic, logic over impulse, mission over emotion. And that's when women start to feel something powerful, not your absence but your presence. Because real presence isn't physical, it's energetic. When your energy is balanced, grounded, and unbothered, it radiates. You become unpredictable in the best way possible, calm in chaos, focused in noise, content in solitude, and that aura, that quiet masculine certainty, is what pulls people in without you saying a word. Now here's where the transformation completes itself. You stop living in reaction to her. You stop making choices that revolve around what she thinks, what she'll say, or whether she'll notice. Instead, you live in alignment with your values, and that's when your worth becomes self-sustaining. You don't need validation because you embody it. Your goals begin to sharpen, your routine gets disciplined, your environment starts to reflect the kind of man you've become. You find joy in creation instead of distraction. You find peace in solitude instead of needing company. And slowly, your focus becomes a force that bends reality in your favor. Now let's talk about regret. By the time she realizes what she lost, you're already gone. Not physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. You're no longer standing at the gates of her approval. You're too busy building your kingdom, and that's when she feels it, the distance that can't be crossed by a simple message or apology, because you're not the same man she left. You've evolved beyond her version of you. Her regret becomes irrelevant because your evolution already rewarded you. Her absence created your purpose. Her silence gave birth to your self-respect. Her rejection revealed your power. That's the irony of growth. You wanted her to see your worth, but the truth is, you needed to see it first. This is the essence of Stoic power. It's not about indifference. It's about emotional freedom. The ability to remain calm in chaos, loving without attachment, and losing without breaking. Because a man who can control his emotions can control his reality. So no, the goal was never to make her regret losing you. That was just the illusion your ego wanted to chase. The real goal was to evolve into a man so self-aware, so grounded, and so purpose-driven. When you reach that level, you stop playing the old game. You stop waiting for closure because you realize closure isn't given, it's created. You stop obsessing over how long it takes them to regret, because your time now belongs to your becoming. And that's the final shift. That's the moment where freedom begins, because now you no longer live for reaction, you live for creation. Your peace is no longer fragile, your heart is no longer hostage, and your mind, it's finally disciplined enough to understand that detachment is not losing emotion, it's mastering it. From this point forward, everything changes. Your presence becomes rare, your silence becomes powerful, your purpose becomes sacred. You walk like a man who has faced loss and smiled through it. You speak like a man who has nothing to prove anymore, and you live like a man who knows peace is the loudest revenge. So if you're wondering, how long does it take her to regret losing me? The real answer is this: it takes as long as it takes you to stop caring. Because when your life becomes the reward, her regret is just background noise. And that's the beauty of it all. You don't wait for them to regret you. You evolve until regret has no place in your story, because your story now belongs to purpose, peace, and power. You are no longer the one who was left behind. You are the one who rose above. And when a man rises above everything that tried to break him, he doesn't chase love, he embodies it. That's the ending. That's the peace. That's the power. And that's where your new life begins.